The past is prologue, said Shakespeare. In the case of CSX Transportation's Corbin Division, the past hinges on the L&N, otherwise known as the Louisville and Nashville Railroad. The L&N has been described as a Southern institution of the highest order, and for good reason. The L&N was chartered by the Commonwealth of Kentucky in 1850, a good 80 years before this 482 steam engine posed for its portrait at the railroad's South Louisville shops. Following the Civil War, the road began to spread into the Deep South, acquiring and building lines which eventually would allow service between Louisville and Birmingham, Alabama in 1872. The L&N was cautious and conservative, a railroad that lived by its slogan, "Old Reliable." But what L&N may have lacked in flash and glamour, it compensated with rock-solid profitability. When America entered World War II, President J.B. Hill predicted the railroad and its employees would not be found wanting. Even the Great Depression of the 1930s couldn't trip up the Old Reliable. The reasons were as sensible and straightforward as the L&N itself: coal and conservatism. During L&N's heyday, bituminous coal from online mines in eastern Kentucky accounted for 57% of all company tonnage and 40% of total revenues. You'd think a conservative L&N would have shunned those newfangled diesels of the 1940s, but weight restrictions south of Nashville prompted L&N to sample its first diesels, 16 E6 cab units built by the Electromotive Division of General Motors. On the other hand, L&N continued to order freight locomotives that burned the same coal that filled its hopper cars. The 42 Big Emma 284s ordered in the early 1940s were the ultimate development of L&N steam. Still, the writing was on the wall for Big Emma and L&N's other steamers. When a Big Emma was tested against a 4,500 horsepower set of EMD F3s in 1948, the diesels came out on top, and by 1959, internal combustion had toppled L&N steam. The first wave of F units came in a simple black paint scheme, an attempt to disguise the oil burners from L&N's online coal producers. But as the diesels took hold, the paint scheme flowered, graced with L&N's traditional herald. L&N's image was already in twilight when the camera caught these late-model alcoves at the diesel shop in Corbin, Kentucky in 1978. L&N had long been a marketing component of Seaboard Coastline Industries, which owned 98% of L&N stock. In the mid-1970s, L&N and a host of smaller railroads controlled by SCL were dubbed the Family Lines as a marketing tactic. The name foretold the end of the L&N when it was folded into CSX Transportation on December 29, 1982. Of course, you can argue that L&N's corporate identity began to crumble back in 1902. That's when a majority of L&N stock was secured by Atlantic Coastline, a Seaboard Coastline predecessor. But then, it wouldn't really matter. As we said earlier, L&N's past is CSX's prologue. Or to put it another way, that was then, and this is now. Our story unfolds over 100 miles of what is arguably the most scenic portion of the Corbin Division in Kentucky and Tennessee. Starting at Orlando, Kentucky, we'll travel south on the CC subdivision to Sinks, the junction with the Lebanon branch. From there, we'll drop south to Perth South, the north end of the Crooked Hill Pusher District. We'll climb Crooked Hill to the Pusher Base at East Bernstadt. Then we'll continue south to the division point of Corbin, Kentucky, the junction with the Cumberland Valley subdivision and the heart of CSX Transportation's operations in eastern Kentucky. From Corbin, we'll head south on the KD sub to Lott, the junction with Norfolk Southern's Clear Fork branch. We'll continue to Morley, a few miles south of the Kentucky-Tennessee state line. Then we'll do battle with Duff Mountain, starting at Chaskey, another pusher base. We'll climb to Oaks until we top the grade at Habersham. Then it's downhill to Kilsey as we continue south to Jacksboro and the end of our on location near Vasper, Tennessee. Our first stop at Orlando offers an overview of the traffic, history, and engineering you'll find on this portion of the CC subdivision. We're at Tunnel 14, deep in the heart of the Daniel Boone National Forest. The northbound empty coal train charging toward us is about to thread itself through Tunnel 15, a short bore dubbed the Needle's Eye. Orlando also offers evidence of the changes that have transformed the CC subdivision since World War II. The KC on this milepost marker reveals the line's heritage as Kentucky Central, which L&N acquired in 1892. 147 is the mileage from Covington, Kentucky, the north end of the old KC. This abandoned tunnel offers another glimpse of the past. Prior to 1963, the CC was a double-track railroad governed by automatic block signals, or ABS. The railroad operated like a two-lane highway with trains moving in one direction on each track. But declining traffic prompted L&N to convert the line to a single-track railroad. By removing much of the north track and leaving long passing sidings, L&N saved on track investment and maintenance, benefits it passed along to CSX. Today, the former south track handles trains in both directions. The key is centralized traffic control, known as CTC. CTC allows the CSX dispatcher to control switches and signals from a computerized dispatching center located hundreds of miles away in Jacksonville, Florida. What looks like another tunnel is actually an abandoned limestone quarry at Mullins, just north of Sinks, Kentucky. Sinks is short for Sinks of the Roundstone. The name refers to a nearby stream that disappears from sight when it sinks into the ground. Something of L&N's old double-track railroad can be seen in this tunnel at Mullins. Here, the north track survives as a 9-mile-long passing siding dubbed Track Number 1. But there's more to L&N's legacy here than tracks and tunnels.
I think a lot of the L&N influence is still here, and I can attest to that because I've found this railroad virtually my entire life, and it still looks like and sounds like and smells like the L&N in many ways. You still got yellow-nosed diesels, still got the same character of traffic on this line. It's still very much the same. It just says CSX instead of L&N. I think you can also see that in some of the operating philosophy. The L&N was a very conservative, well-managed, and efficient railroad, and CSX, I would say, at least here, meets that test. But the L&N was a darn good railroad, and you can see it reflected in this railroad today.
Sinks was once the junction with the Lebanon branch, the original objective of the Kentucky Central. In L&N days, the branch handled traffic moving between Corbin and Louisville. Today, the branch survives as little more than an industrial spur, albeit one graced with a tunnel near its connection with the CC main. Perth South is the north end of what is known as Crooked Hill. For 6 miles, the CC sub is cursed with a 1.35% grade and a seemingly endless series of tight 8-degree curves. The railroad's response to the hill are pushers, known to local railroaders as hill helpers, one of several terms unique to this part of the Corbin division.
These are pronunciations that are kind of indigenous to the area, but Chaska, which is spelled C-H-A-S-K-A, is Chaskey, and K-I-L-S-Y-T-H, which would be Kilsyth or something like that, is Kilsey. Some of the local terms you'll hear, you may hear the term slop parades. Slop freight is a merchandise train that's probably less than a real hot priority. I would call 548 and 549 just long over-the-road locals. They stop, make set-outs and pickups along the route, so they're not really hot trains, so they're sloppers.
The Crooked Hill Helper consists of 2 late-model General Electric C40s, including comfort cab-equipped 7751. With little or no public access to the area, the best way to see Crooked Hill may be from the cab of a locomotive. The Crooked Hill Helpers are based at East Bernstadt, 12 miles or so south of Perth South. The view from the Hill Helpers as we move north offers a different view. The building to the right of the main line is the office where the pusher crews get lineups and instructions from the Jacksonville dispatcher.
On our division alone, up here in the Cincinnati division, we'll probably average something like 20, 25 trains a day. Then the K and A south of Corbin will probably have 25% more than that. So you're talking about a lot of coal business. Then we have 6 automobile trains a day scheduled, and a tote train, a through local, with all the coal trains they have. So you get real crowded out here occasionally. It's a lot of trains moving. It always makes me hope that the dispatcher's on his toes and keeping the blocks lined right.
Mind you, heavy traffic is nothing new on this line. As L&N's KY division, it served as the northern leg of the old Reliable's Cincinnati to Atlanta, Maine. More important, the KY handled thousands of tons of coal flowing from the Harlan County coal fields to the Cincinnati Gateway. From there, the coal moved to eastern railroads for delivery to industries on the Great Lakes. Even after the single tracking project of the early 1960s, coal continued to flow from south to north, but not for long. During the energy crisis of the early 1970s, coal began to move to power plants in the south. Around the same time, coal traffic to northern industries began to fall off. L&N found itself saddled with a physical plant geared to moving the opposite direction of the traffic flow. When Middle Eastern oil producers turned off the taps in 1974, the price of coal skyrocketed from $10 a ton to more than $60. The Eastern Kentucky coal producers called for more cars and faster service. Already punch-drunk, L&N struggled to stay on its feet in the face of its biggest traffic surge since World War II. Conservative as always, the railroad ordered enough new locomotives to get by. After all, the L&N had seen other coal booms and busts. But demand for utility coal continued to grow to the tune of 150% between 1970 and 1980. The L&N was trapped between a shortage of people, engines, and cars on one hand and battered track on the other. Like King Midas in reverse, the old Reliable's conservative approach worked against it, hampering its ability to reinvent itself in the face of change. The crisis was resolved in 1979 when the Interstate Commerce Commission granted a 22% rate increase on L&N's interstate coal movements. The coal producers howled until the railroad launched a $427 million capital improvement program. The plan included new locomotives and much-needed improvements to the physical plant. The changes are readily apparent as our Hill Helpers roll north into Perth South. We're taking the siding track, which is 15,706 feet long. Sitting on the main track in the distance as the unit coal train will push over Crooked Hill. After we stop, the coal train pulls ahead. The 7655 is a 4,000 horsepower C40-8 built by GE with a comfort cab, often called a wide body or super cab on the Corbin division. Coupled behind the power is a unit train composed of 90 cars. After the coal train has cleared the switch, the Jacksonville dispatcher lines the switch for the siding. The Hill Helpers then move south over the switch toward the rear of the coal train. The helper conductor removes the end-of-train monitor that's replaced the caboose on most American freight trains. The next step is to couple the air brake hoses between the rear of the coal train and the helper engine. This allows the helper engineer to oversee the coal train's air brake pressure while the monitor is disconnected. When the hill helpers finally lean their 8,000 horsepower shoulder into the rear of the coal train, the only thing to be heard is the creak of steel wheels on steel rails. To anyone but a railroad civil engineer, Crooked Hill's 8-degree curves and a 1.35% grade may seem abstract, even meaningless. But here in the real world, you can see the train bending around those curves. It's relatively calm inside the cab of the trailing diesel, time enough to ask our engineer what he thinks of his job.
The thing about being an engineer that I've learned so far is that no one job's alike at any particular day. So being an engineer is sort of like a doctor. It's sort of like an art form. It's not a scientific thing. It's something you got to, through experience, you got to feel it. As well as reading the probabilities and everything, you got to have that gut sense or something. The final call is your experience, what you feel after seeing what your information is.
The single tracking project left a trail of abandoned tunnels on Crooked Hill, most of them dating to 1882. It's not hard to imagine a Big Emma or an F3 bursting out of this portal. Until they invent a time machine, you'll have to settle for the CSX vehicles that use the old right-of-way as a service road. Fortunately, Tunnel 8 has a sister tunnel that's still in use. Another active tunnel is number 9. In 1964, the L&N lowered the roadbed through here to provide better clearance for high cars, including the auto racks we saw at Tunnel 8. Fortunately, tight clearances aren't a problem for the coal traffic that makes up the bulk of the traffic moving over Crooked Hill. Just how important is coal to CSX? In 1994, the railroad moved 1,678,000 carloads of coal, which translates into $1.5 billion in revenue. CSX competitor Conrail tends to assign older locomotives to pusher service on Horseshoe Curve in Pennsylvania, but not CSX. With a 40% market share compared to its Eastern Rail competition, CSX knows the value of using newer, reliable locomotives in pusher service. Not that CSX turns up its yellow nose at other commodities. The $4.63 billion that the railroad generated in operating revenue in 1994 was due in part to exceptional growth in merchandise traffic. These boxcars reflect the railroad's 33% market share in food and consumer goods. Bulkhead flats represent a 33% share in forest products. Chemicals reflect a 39% market share, much of which is carried in tank cars. And scrap steel moving in gondolas represents a 28% market share in metals. One of the few places on Crooked Hill with a name instead of a number is Hazel Patch, which offers further proof that Crooked Hill came by its name honestly. The object of these curled rail fasteners is to keep the rail from shifting sideways. Corbin is the junction of 3 major subdivisions and also features a big classification yard and locomotive shop. Let's take a closer look. Corbin Terminal is composed of 2 yards, the East Yard and the West Yard. In the middle of both yards is the locomotive shop complex, divided into 3 components: the Locomotive Service Center, the main facility, and the pre-inspection building. Corbin is also home to the Corbin Division offices, which are located at the north end of the terminal across the tracks from the old L&N passenger station. Finally, Corbin is the junction of the CC sub to Cincinnati to the north, the KD subdivision to Knoxville to the south, and to the east, the Cumberland Valley subdivision, otherwise known as the CV. This empty CV coal train rolling out of Corbin can trace its past to 1886. That's the year construction crews began to build the CV east from Corbin. When the CV reached the Norfolk and Western at Norton, Virginia 5 years later, the CV became a bridge route for east-west traffic. But the jewel in the CV's crown was the completion in 1911 of a line into the Harlan County coal fields. Today, coal accounts for 100% of the CV's traffic. Coal means unit trains, a system whereby entire trains are matched with rapid loading facilities and unloading facilities. The use of dedicated cars, such as these 100-ton hoppers, achieves mileage per day averages that are as much as 20 times higher than that of a general service car. What's more, the entire train travels direct from origin to destination without being switched at intermediate points. It's a win-win situation for everyone concerned. CSX gains a high degree of equipment utilization, and the customer receives an attractive freight rate. But unit trains like this one at Hamilton, Kentucky weren't always the order of the day. In the dark days before the 1970s, coal often originated as single-car shipments. Although a coal train might have looked like this modern unit train, it actually consisted of cars from numerous mines headed to just as many customers. Denham Coal still ships small amounts of coal this way. Trucks bring in coal from Hazard for processing. First, the coal is gravity dumped into the processor. Then it's sorted into 3 grades, 2-inch block coal for home heating and 2 grades of stoker coal for government contracts. Although Denham handled some 260,000 tons of coal last year, only 30 or 40,000 tons moved by rail. The rest left Denham the same way it arrived, by truck. More typical is Bledsoe Coal, a fast-loading facility located in Hamilton on the CV's Straight Creek branch. Like Denham, coal arrives at Bledsoe by truck, but that's where the similarities end. Bledsoe receives 12,000 tons of coal a day, a portion of which is stockpiled. The rest is loaded into CSX unit trains and shipped to utilities in the south. Operators monitor the slow progress of the empty coal train as the overhead tipple spews a stream of coal into each empty hopper. By the time the westbound loads arrive at Corbin, the coal is settled into rounded piles. We're standing on the north lead to the east yard, primarily used for single-car shipments. Coal trains, on the other hand, generally head into the west yard, where they are inspected and recrewed. Car department employees known as car knockers inspect inbound trains on 2 inspection tracks spaced 22 feet apart. When a light running repair needs to be made, the car knockers can handle it on the spot instead of waiting for the car to be switched out to a repair track. A minor point perhaps, but it improves equipment utilization and satisfies the customer, one of Corbin Terminal's major goals.
To say my most stressful point of it is is when our traffic pattern's interrupted, where we can't get our shipments to our customers. Because without our customers, we don't sell apples and oranges. We don't sell clothes. We sell service. And if we can't perform and sell that service and provide that service to our customers, we're not doing our job. And if we're not doing our job, then there's other modes of transportation. So I've got 40 years. I've seen a lot of changes from the steam engine days now to the AC engines. A lot of changes. But the basic concept is still the same thing. You run a train from point A to point B and deliver the customer's goods. If they pay you for it, you go back and invest and do it again.
The old L&N passenger station at the north end of Corbin Terminal once was home to both L&N and CSX dispatchers. Given the problems that the L&N faced in the 1970s, the station was undoubtedly a hotbed of stress and heartache. Of course, the dispatchers are gone now, relocated to Jacksonville. But the stress and heartache didn't leave town. It simply moved across the tracks to the Corbin Yardmaster's office.
There's no really worst thing about it. It's a good job. We're completely out of the weather. Sometimes it does get busy. You have so many. I have 5 radio channels. I have 3 dispatcher wires. I have 4 telephones. The quad screen. We stay busy, and sometimes, which you can't, nobody out there knows what you're doing, so they can't tell when to call you. But you may have 3 phones ringing, 3 people hollering at you on the radio, and a dispatcher wanting to talk to you, all at the same time, and then for the next 30 minutes, nobody wants to talk to you. Yardmaster J.R. Miller, over. J.R., did you get the yard here on 8 East this morning? Okay, all right, thanks.
Locomotives represent another facet of Corbin Terminal's personality. Each of the C-40s leading this empty coal train out of the West Yard cranks out 4,000 horsepower, more than double the horsepower rating of one of L&N's F-3s. But all the King's horsepower isn't enough when Humpty Dumpty is short of locomotives. Or so we learned when we asked the manager of operating practices what topped his wish list for the Corbin division.
More engines, more locomotives. That's what we're short of. And below that, like I said, it just makes your life easier because of the way the railroad traffic flows. We have a traffic flow that, it generates in spurts. And one day you'll have 15 coal trains to load on a division. The next day we'll load 5. So we've got enough locomotives to handle the midpoints of it to load 10 a day. All right, so the days you load 15, you got trains sitting. But it'll fluctuate out, but that's just kind of the fluctuation of the coal business. That's basically it.
With locomotives in demand, availability is a priority. But a reliable locomotive in the hand is worth 2 bushed locomotives on a stalled train. And that's where the Corbin Locomotive Shop comes in.
Well, what we do here at Corbin is mainly 92-day maintenance work and fallout work. What we classify as fallout work would be a locomotive that doesn't run the entire 92-day time frame between maintenance levels, and it falls out for whatever reason. The air compressor goes bad, the turbo goes bad, we get a water leak, the radiators leak, whatever. We're of course situated in southeastern Kentucky here, and we do get locomotives in from the north and the south. We're kind of a midpoint in the system, and we can do just about everything we can with the exception of heavy repair work, and we do send that to our other facilities. We try to have 12 locomotives a day, every day, 365 days a year, for 92-day maintenance intervals. That locomotive will come into the service center, will be processed through there, and then go into what we call pre-inspection mode. At that point in time, the locomotive will be inspected electrically and mechanically for all the different areas of not only federal policy, but CSX policy that we want to check on our locomotives. It's about a 2-hour process. We load box the engine. We find out everything we can possibly find out about that locomotive. We go over the histories of the locomotive. Once that's done and we've found everything that is wrong with the locomotive, why it's not performing properly or why it is performing properly, we bring it over to the main facility over here. And at the main facility, it goes into what we term a backup area where we handle all the external reports, oil filter changes, that kind of stuff that has to be done, any radiators that would have to be done, any of the heavy work. Once that's all done, We back out of the facility and we come down what we term a spot line or a queue line. And then we do specific 92-day maintenance. Once that locomotive goes through the process and goes back out, it goes back onto the railroad and back to the service center to take its next train on. And the whole process takes roughly, what we're shooting for is 27 hours for that whole process to take place. And we hang in that neighborhood. These guys do an excellent job, they really do. We've got about 230 people here at Corbin. That's 3 shifts, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's a pretty diverse crew. Any locomotive at any point in time with about any problem you can think of can be fixed right here. We run our trains to about the maximum tonnage we can get, which is one reason why our locomotives have to go out there, run for a 92-day time frame. They have to perform every day of that time frame, because once they come out and they go to the locomotive shop for an unscheduled shopping, we run the risk of having an unsatisfied customer out there because we didn't get his train to him on time, you know. So the idea is to keep the fleet as small as you can and have that fleet that you do have out there running every day that it's supposed to be running. You don't see excess locomotives on a CSX train. Yeah, we may be shuttling power somewhere, and if we are, those extra locomotives are dead. You know, they're not out there idling along, just wasting fuel. You know, they're being conserved, and like I say, we're maximizing every piece of horsepower that we've got out there.
Since the Corbin Locomotive Shop was opened in 1986, it's handled thousands of diesels. Let's take a closer look at some of the engines the shop ministers to. The 7849 is a C40-8W, which the railroad calls a CW40-8. The W in the title stands for wide cab, which offers improved collision protection and visibility for crews. The C indicates the unit has a 3-motor truck equipped with 3 conventional DC traction motors. The rectangular radiator intake grills are canted outward under the thick radiator wings so typical of Dash 8 production. The David to the C40's Goliath is this 1,800 horsepower U-18B, one of 102 units built for CSX predecessor Seaboard Coastline. The U stands for Universal Series, which GE produced between 1959 and 1977. The B stands for 4-axle truck, which happens to be a Blomberg truck from an EMD-F unit traded to GE. Finally, this yard slug set offers more pulling power for less fuel and maintenance cost. The 4291 is a GP39, a 2,300 horsepower diesel built for road service. A series of bus cables carries the GP39's traction current to this slug. The slug has traction motors, but no engine to fuel or maintain. From Corbin, our story continues south along CSX's wild and woolly KD sub. We'll check out the line from trackside as well as from inside the cab of a southbound unit coal train. Let's hit the road. Like the crew we'll be riding with, our journey starts in the crew office. This is both arrival and departure point for train crews assigned to trains operating on all 3 subdivisions. The train orders and clearances that train crews collected from the operator in L&N days are long gone, replaced by a computer that yields lineups, slow orders, and track warrants. Until CSX figures out a way to fax a crew to their train, it relies on a crew hauler to cart the crew to the head end. Little Caesar's Pizza doesn't exactly deliver to trains on the KD sub, so crews carry their meals and drinks in their own coolers. As soon as the crew finishes inspecting the power, we'll be on our way. There's a light rain falling as we roll out of the south end of Corbin, but we take it in stride. Regardless of whether you're riding the Santa Fe through the San Bernardino Mountains or Conrail through the Alleghenies, mountain weather is temperamental. Besides, the rain gives us an excuse to ask our engineer how he feels about operating trains on this leg of the KD sub.
This area, this terrain around here is just like a roller coaster because you're constantly either uphill or downhill, and around the curve, there's no real straight track, there's no real level track. It's just uphill or downhill all the way. Curves will slow a train down a lot. A lot of people don't realize that, but you know, you can use them to your advantage or disadvantage. You know, you need to let the train work for you naturally. You let the train do all the work if you can, and curves will help you. A standard coal train, all of our coal trains are 90-car coal trains, somewhere in the neighborhood of right about 12,000 tons. And you know what to expect out of them over the hills and the grades. Then you get the mixed intermodal trains, solid auto racks or trailer trains that are anywhere, 65, 7,000, sometimes 7,500 feet long. And you have your train over 3 hills at one time. And, where a coal train, they're usually about 5,000 feet long, and you can, you just, I don't know, you work them so much, you learn how to control them a lot better. Then you get these big, long trains that are stretched out all over the countryside, and they're a lot of fun. They can be a pain.
The KB sub took root as an extension of the Lebanon branch of all things. Originally known as the K&A, the line formed one leg of L&N's original route between Louisville and Atlanta. Compared to its KY cousin north of Corbin, the K&A was a poor relation. With little more than a pair of through freights and a handful of single-car coal trains, the K&A got by with a single-track line and 13 short passing sidings. The L&N's decision to boost clearances on the KY extended to the K&A as well. Within 5 years, new coal contracts were signed for power plants in Tennessee and Georgia. For the first time, unit trains of coal moved from eastern Kentucky coal fields in the north to customers in the south. In 1970, the K&A became the KD, or Knoxville Division. But a name change alone couldn't help the KD during the oil crisis of the 70s. While the CC subdivision grappled with the problem of how to move coal trains south instead of north, the KD struggled to simply move more trains. Somewhere in this tangle of trees, we cross the border of Kentucky and Tennessee near a timetable location called High Cliff. At this point, we begin to climb the 0.03% grade up Duff Mountain, Crooked Hill's ugly stepsister. The track that enters the tunnel on our left is Norfolk Southern's Clear Fork branch. NS trains have trackage rights over the KD sub from Lott, which is 4.5 miles behind us, to this spot called Holton. The track on the left forms a Y with the Clear Fork branch on the east end of the tunnel. The switch is located at the north end of this single truss bridge, one of several railroad engineering feats to be found at Morley, Tennessee. How do trains crossing the bridge look from trackside? Let's see. The tunnel up ahead is known as Hickory No. 1, one of 3 tunnels in the next 4 miles. All 3 tunnels take their name from Hickory Creek, which more or less follows the KD sub to the top of Duff Mountain at Habersham. We don't know how you feel about it, but lunging out of a dark tunnel and slamming across an unprotected private road isn't our idea of fun. Fortunately, the view is less stressful from the overhead bridge in the distance. We discovered that Morley had a lot more to offer than bridges and tunnels when we caught this southbound slot freight south of Hickory No. 1. We practically had to jump-start our hearts when the locomotives turned out to be an EMD SD40-2, a GEC 30-7, an MP15AC, and a Southern Pacific GE B36-7. The power consist was so unusual that we actually chased the train south to see it again. Did we make the right decision? The rest of the train gave us a chance to consider the state of the U.S. railcar fleet. As of January 1st, 1995, the fleet stood at 1.19 million cars, the first increase since 1980. These tank cars are a fraction of the almost 200,000 tank cars in service. These boxcars belong to a class of approximately 165,000. The number of covered hoppers in service is more than 310,000. There are 157,000 gons like this in service. Although these old hopper cars have been demoted to hauling old ties, they're kinned at 188,000 sister cars, most of which remain in unit coal train service. Finally, the loaded bulkhead flat bringing up the rear of the train represents one of 129,000 flat cars in service. We'll see more as our trip continues. Back on our southbound train, we pop out of the south end of Hickory number 2 and roll across the creek itself. This is one of 7 places the KD sub crosses the creek in the next 2 miles. A short distance later, we duck into Hickory number 3, the shortest of the 3 tunnels on this section of the line. We're rolling through an area called the Narrows. To our right, Highway 25W and Hickory Creek fight for space in the narrow canyon. Straight track brings us into the north end of Chaskey. This is the base of the helper district that will carry us over Duff Mountain. For the next 7 miles, the southbound grade varies between 0.76 and 1.15%. Fortunately, the engine to our left is the Chaskey Hill Helper, which will help shove our 9,000-ton coal train up the grade. The coaling tower on the left once fed coal to the steam engines that were used here, but the same diesels that killed off L&N steam also spelled the end for the Chaskey Hill Helpers. But what goes around comes around. These southbound unit coal trains that began to operate over the KY in the 1970s required 4 diesels to climb Duff Mountain. Before long, the railroad decided it could save 1 diesel per train by reinstating the Chaskey Hill Helper. Sure enough, by 1979, the Chaskey Hill Helpers were saving the railroad about 25 units a day. As for the coaling tower, those oil-burning diesels just sail by. As our train grinds to a halt, you might be wondering, how does the Chaskey Hill Helper work? Well, first, the KD dispatcher lets the Hill Helper crew know that a southbound coal train is on the way. The Hill Helper then moves to the north end of the siding where it stops to wait for the coal train. At first, the southbound looks like it's making a run for the mountain on its own, but as the end of the train nears the siding switch, it starts to slow down. After the southbound has cleared the switch, the dispatcher lines the switch and signal for the Hill Helper. Unlike the 2 units assigned to the Crooked Hill Helper, the Chaskey Hill Helper rates a single diesel. This is a GE AC 4400, a 4,400 horsepower unit equipped with AC traction motors. AC offers higher adhesion and less slippage than conventional DC motors. After the dispatcher throws the switch normal, the Hill Helper moves south to the rear of the coal train. Like his counterpart on Crooked Hill, the conductor hooks everything up. Then the AC 4400 takes Nike's advice, just do it, and so it does. An empty northbound coal train passes us as we begin our climb out of Chasky. The double track will stay with us for the next 3 miles. It serves its purpose by allowing the dispatcher plenty of room to meet opposing trains. This crossover marks the location of Oaks, midway between Chasky and Habersham. Oaks is named for Jim Oaks, who was division superintendent when the double track and the crossover were installed in 1980. Of course, you don't have to ride a train to appreciate Oak's blend of fast action and mountain scenery. This box is part of a unique derailment detector system on Duff Mountain. When a car derails, it cuts a wire strung across a plank mounted between the rails. Once the wire is cut, the light on this box goes out, telling the crew to stop and inspect the train. This sweeping curve takes us into Habersham. It sounds like the name of a crumbling estate hunched in the fog on the English moors. We'll stop here to meet 2 northbound trains. From the cab, our view of downtown Habersham dispels any romantic notions we might have had about Jane Eyre or Wuthering Heights. Cloudy skies have given way to hazy sun by the time our crew gathers with a local track gang to give the northbound trains a roll-by. Watching a passing train this way is the simplest way to spot equipment defects such as hot wheel bearings and dragging equipment. That's our conductor. His orange safety vest offers better visibility to passing trains and work equipment. Like the workers at the Corbin Locomotive Shop, he wears railroad-mandated safety glasses to protect his eyes. Leaving Habersham, we see the rest of the track gang parked on a spur next to the main line. The KD reverts to single track between Habersham and Kilsea, but one track is enough when the Jacksonville dispatcher is on top of his or her game. Habersham may not be the setting for a Gothic romance, but at least it has one thing going for it in terms of scenery, the Davis Creek Trestle. From Habersham to the top of Duff Mountain, the grade stiffens to 1%. As we near the top of our climb, we spot a number of track-related items. The black stain between the rails shows the location of an automatic wayside rail lubricator. This device applies a thin film of grease to each wheel flange, reducing friction and railhead wear. The replacement concrete ties along the right-of-way signify CSX Transportation's commitment to moving traffic quickly and efficiently on the Corbin Division. How does the railroad rate concrete versus wood ties?
I think I like them. I think it's still, we're in the trial process with them, see how they work. We put the first concrete ties in on the KD sub in 1989, I think it was, and we laid them. And we're now up to about 120 miles of concrete ties on the CC sub and the KD sub. So far, good luck. We've had a couple of slight problems with them. Some gauge opened it up, and we've changed the clips out, and they've done several other things with them. But they hold line a lot better, and hopefully you never have to replace them. You know, and that's the major maintenance free on that right there is the big one. But they hold line a whole lot better than the wood ties.
The wood ties in this switch give way to concrete as we roll through Kelsey. The siding here is just over 9,000 feet long, plenty of space to meet opposing trains. Check out the lead engines on this pair of southbounds. This early version of CSX Transportation's paint scheme lacks the yellow nose, which improves the unit's visibility at grade crossings. GP40-2 6608 wears the paint scheme of predecessor Chessie System, the 1973 merger of Chesapeake in Ohio, Baltimore in Ohio, and Western Maryland. We're still on a 1% grade south of Kelsey. Fortunately, we're rolling downhill. It seems like a good time to ask our engineer his opinion about the diesels he operates on the KD sub.
I like the EMDs the best because well, they got a quicker throttle response to them. Seems like they hold the rail a lot better. They're just a much better engine, I feel like. I think the new technology is, I think it's more of a hindrance to me because a lot of things that they'll do now as far as when they tear up and stuff, there's nothing I can do. I have no control over it. A lot of times when the computer shuts something down, There's no way you can go in there and override the computer to fix it. You have to call the dispatcher. They have to get a hold of somebody at the power board to get a hold of you to try to talk you through it to get them started again. With the older power, there were always reset buttons that you could go back and reset, or you knew what was wrong with it, and you could reset it, get it started, get it going again. But these new ones, if the computer puts it down, you can't override the computer and do anything with it.
We're 3 miles south of Kilsea on Bridge 78. This is Big Creek, which follows the KD sub from here to La Follette. That's Highway 25W on the east side of the tracks. On the other hand, if you bail off the highway near here and head to the tracks, you may be rewarded with a southbound like this one, powered by a B36-7. This is La Follette, Tennessee. If home values were determined by rail fans, we suspect these houses next to the tracks would be worth plenty. At La Follette, the KD sub finally levels out. We're still pacing Highway 25W, which has acquired the look of a typical suburban strip. The only incongruous item here is a redwood caboose planted between the KD sub and the highway. South of Jacksboro, the railroad starts to look and feel like a mountain railroad again. The C40-8 leading this unit coal train has a determined look on its face. Perhaps it's bracing itself for what lies around the next curve. Our engineer isn't mugging for the camera. He's warning me about the same thing that furrowed the brow of that last C40-8, the high bridge over Cove Creek. How's the view from the river? Well, you could ask these fishermen, but see for yourself. We almost get whacked in the head by the foliage next to the tracks south of the Cove Creek Bridge. A few thousand feet ahead lies the tunnel that marks the end of our story at Vasper. As we plunge into darkness, it's easy to imagine that we're riding the head end of the Southland, the premier passenger train that L&N operated through this tunnel in the 1950s. But then we'd miss what railroading in general, and the Corbin Division in particular, means today.
For a person like me who's rail fan for a while and seen a lot of changes in the industry, as have a lot of people who will see this tape, we've lost a lot of the private passenger trains. We've lost a lot of lines like the Erie-Lackawanna across Indiana. So arguably you could say that the railroad industry is not what it used to be. Well, I don't buy that. I think it's more exciting today than it's ever been. I find more reason to dig my camera out and go out trackside than I did a few years ago. And I'm just glad that it's still here, and I'm glad in particular that it's in a growth mode. When you've got, on some days, anywhere from 7, 8, 9, 10 auto rack trains, that's a real testimony that this is a very vibrant piece of railroad.
Thank you for watching this edition of the Ultimate Railroading DVD series. Look ahead to future installments as together we rediscover the past, present, and future of the world of trains around us.